Welcome to The Brave Journey Within with Jim and Jenn. This show is about the spiritual journey and all of the challenges, healing, wisdom, and consciousness expansion experienced along the way.
Welcome to another edition of The Brave Journey Within with Jim and Jenn. And we're diving into another episode of the pre-apocalypse? No, just kidding. Post lunar or solar eclipse energy and
Both.
navigating the energy that is impacting all of us, right?
Yes, it's been so crazy out there. I have had so many people talk to me about the upheavals in their lives. And so when we were trying to figure out what we wanted to talk about today, the idea of failure and disappointment and the upheaval, and it seems to be hitting all of us in different ways, but it's like this energy is bringing everything to the surface that needs to be healed. And we've had a few years of these types of energies, but it seems to be really climaxing right now. We have so many things that have been going on in 2024. And just in my clients and in some of my colleagues and friends, I'm seeing people leaving situations. I'm seeing relationship issues, a lot of infighting and cattiness, and just people being accused of things. I just so many people have been saying to me that they're being just blasted by people and they don't
Yeah.
know why. People are just suddenly up and leaving circumstances or relationships. And it's all real sudden. It's like it's this big sudden shift that's been happening.
I've also noticed too, like a number of even I was talking to a very successful local business owner for decades is like moving spaces, which is like people that live in this area will hear about it, but it's like, wow. Well, like these sudden changes or people, moving, whether it's, personal residences or office locations, and just like these shifts that are happening that are fairly large scale in their impact,
Yeah.
shaping us individually and then collectively. So it's interesting to see how that is also being attracted in our own lives, right? Like through clients and then like friends, coworkers, and such.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know that I've spoken to anybody recently that's just like, "Oh, no, everything is absolutely perfect. Life is great, couldn't be better." Most people, if not everyone I have spoken with, has been very much like, "I'm just trying to breathe one step at a time, and I'm hoping I make it to tomorrow." It just feels very maybe
It's
volatile is the word.
it's funny because as you say that, I'm like, man, that would be so nice. But then I'm like, wait a minute. If I came across someone like that, I don't know. Would I run or be like, hey, congratulations? Like,
Right, I don't know. I don't know. Well, yeah, I think the the thing that we're meant to understand through all of this is to master what's within us. And so when we were talking about what to do for the show, mastering your disappointments, because ultimately the things that aren't working are disappointing us. We might feel like failures. We might feel like, well, that's not what I expected, or that's not what I wanted, or I've been working really hard for this thing, but now this is showing up. And so, how do we use this to our advantage, and how do we master it and really grow stronger from it and become better people?
I was telling you, I was listening to this guy named Ron Holt, and one of the things that the visualizations that he talked about, he's like, we all have these sort of wounds, and one way to think about them is say this wound is coloring your lens and how you perceive the world, and if those like dragonfly type things that you could like see through or whatever. It's like everything you look at is going to have a little piece of that on that fractal
Hmm.
until you resolve it.
Yeah.
But once you resolve it, it's almost like if they were, use the word like iron, like metal shavings or something like that, like a magnet, like will take them all off, right? And it'll clear up for you. But you have to notice that it's there,
That's the hard
and
part.
it can be, right? But then
Yeah,
it's almost like the intensity ramps up, or it's just that wound keeps coming back.
until you recognize it, right?
Mhm.
But sometimes even then, I even notice in myself that the same pattern will be showing up and I'm really trying to figure out what it is, but sometimes I need to go to somebody else and have that pattern shown to me or looked at through someone else's lens to be able to reflect to me, what am I blind to or what am I missing? Um, and sometimes even they can't see it because it's meant to be a bit more of a process. I think
Like, it's not meant for that.
it's not time. The cake isn't ready yet. You can't take it out of the oven.
That's so funny you say that.
Did I
I was
trigger
just
you?
thinking no, you didn't trigger me, but it was just like, I recently learned how to bake bread, and for anyone listening that bakes bread like a champ or an expert, like, good on you. Like, I had never done that before, and the end result, well, at least the first time, came out really good, but you have to be patient, right, and wait for, like, the yeast to rise and like, proof or something like that,
Yeah,
and you can't there's no rushing it, right? Like, if you rush it, you'll ruin it. It's just
that's
not
true.
ready, and
That's
so it's
true.
interesting to hear you say the food reference, but, like, patience is something I struggle with because it's like, "Okay, I wanna fix this now," but then you have to wait, and it's like, oh, I don't really wanna do that." But, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes when that happens for me, it's because whatever's happening, there's usually more than one reason for it. I think that God or universe likes to have more than one reason for the experiences we're going through. And so it's usually more complex than I have this one thing I need to learn or this one thing I need to heal. Sometimes there's a wound that needs to be healed, and there's five different lessons that need to be learned. And by the way, there's some karma thrown in there too. So let's clear it all together. And there's a process in that, and where maybe you learn one lesson up front and then you've got to work on the karma, and then maybe then you can heal the wounding, and then you got to learn the other lessons. So there's like a bit of a process in there. And so
Yeah.
it feels like maybe we're not resolving the issue when we are, but like maybe that karma needs to come through when you have a contract with another soul who's meant to come in your life at a certain point in time, and things just kind of need to wait for that. So you need to wait for that yeast to fully activate and do what it needs to do so that you can then come out with this perfect loaf of bread. But if you try to figure it out in other ways, sometimes it's more of a disaster.
I have heard from other, healers and therapists, like, this is sort of a time where your, soul contracts or your karma that you may have with other people is coming to the word they used was a resolution.
That's a perfect word.
So and that's probably the nicest word you could use, right? But it doesn't mean it might not be unpleasant or that there might be friction involved in that or conflict, but and then the other thing I wanted to touch on too, when you said going to someone, uh, one time in particular, it was very helpful for me to get another perspective where it was, someone was able to see, like, listen, you're being shown a false mirror.
Mm.
So, and that's being reflected back on you, and you're struggling, like, you're, like, right there, but you haven't quite, like, it, but you haven't caught on to it.
So it
And we talk about, like, narcissism and things like that sometimes, like, the
Yes.
gaslighting and all that sort of toxicity, like, where it's like, "Wait, am I the one that's in the wrong here? Like,
Right,
what did I
yeah,
do?"
yeah. So explain for anyone who's listening, is that what you mean by a false mirror? Someone's trying to reflect something back to you that's not even yours?
Right, like,
So it's
you
more of a
are
projection.
it's a projection of the people view you through their own lens, right? Their own
Right.
projection. Um, and a lot of times it's not your stuff, which many people listening might know that,
Yeah.
like, but when you are on the receiving end of something, you question yourself, am I
Yeah.
honoring this relationship in integrity? Am I honoring my commitment or am I not? Am I in the wrong here? Am I not seeing this clearly? And if you are unsure or like my demon can be doubt, I'll just share that, right? So it's like, okay, then I'm doubting myself now. Like, and so it's hard, you have to see things from multiple perspectives. If you can identify that you're being shown a false mirror, it changes your perspective on, okay, how am I, being
Yeah.
present, if you will, in this moment or this situation or this relationship.
Yeah, it's not always easy because a lot of times what I will see is either people are trying not to see what they need to see in themselves, so they're just willfully ignoring the work they need to do, or they're so, and I tend to be more like this too, where I'm so questioning of myself and falling for the false mirrors and trying to figure out, well, where did I go wrong? And if I'm not, I've gotten a lot better with this, but if I'm not careful about it, I will tend to more shut down thinking I did something really wrong when maybe I didn't, and not understand like where my real work is in that situation. Because if you're falling for the false mirrors, you still have work to do. There's still something for you to understand. That's why it's showing up in your experience. But it might not be what that person is trying to point to you as being. Um, it's more like an awareness of, I think what I was saying to you earlier, what's theirs versus what's mine. How are they trying? Like, what goggles are they using to see me through, and what goggles am I perceiving this through myself? And where is the inner work that me myself, because I can't control anybody else, me myself that I need to do, and what is this energy, especially nowadays, what is this energy trying to bring up for us? What where are we going with this, and what are we trying to purge?
Well,
It's very purging.
I mean, one strategy, an easy way to remember it, right, is like when in doubt, zoom out.
Yeah.
Pause with it, right? I mean, you don't have to necessarily solve it right now. Sit with it. This is one practice that I hated it in my mindfulness training, and it was like, well, you hate it for a reason. You don't like doing it.
Yeah.
But when you had a question or you were faced with a challenge, a lot of times the teacher, sort of the higher level teachers will be like, this is something that you need to sit with. I'm not here to fix you.
Mm.
You need to figure this out, but sit with it. Like you need to tussle with it. And when you that's a skill to be able to do that and put the effort in, because a lot of times we want resolution, right? Like what I want is being impatient, like, or how do I fix this, right? So then you
Well, because we want to reduce suffering, right?
mm,
In some way, we are having pain or suffering, or it's really challenging or uncomfortable. And we want that negative experience to stop. I
okay,
remember
so
when
you're getting to the root of it.
I remember one time I was working with a life coach, and there was a health issue I was working on that I was just like, no, you know what? This has got to be healed. And she was like, well, hold on a minute. She's like, I want you to lean into this for a minute. What if it never healed? And I was like, what do you mean? It's got to heal. Like, I can't go through life with this thing. And, but it was very interesting the resistance I had to it, even just being present with it and having it be a part of my experience, because it was uncomfortable. I didn't want it. It wasn't something I wanted my life to be. But it's what's here. And I think we're so in resistance, and that's a big key word is when we're having resistance to something, we need to recognize where that resistance is and let things flow again. And man, I can be queen of resistance. I am so good at experiencing that just blind resistance to something and not sitting with it. That's a really hard thing because you got to sit in the discomfort.
Well, and because it can often be subconscious or
Mhm.
it's an unconscious thought pattern,
Yeah.
that you're not choosing, right, to be in resistance necessarily. And this happens to everybody, me
Yes.
included, where there's layers of it.
Yeah.
There is layers of it. Um,
But that resistance or that fear, that discomfort is going to rule us if we don't sit with it. I think that's the key. We've got to sit with it. We've got to be uncomfortable in it for a minute and be willing to face it and not to surrender to it in a way where it's like, okay, so this health issue or this whatever the challenge is in your life, that it's going to stick around forever because it doesn't have to most of the time. Most of the time we can clear these things, but it's that fear of it that keeps us blind. And I think you're totally right that if we can sit with it and be present with it and be in that discomfort and like wrestle with it a little bit if we need to, then we can come to the resolution. But boy, that's not easy.
no, but that's where you start to find, right, okay, this is happening now. There's a reason for it. If I face it and I'm willing to, like, you really do have to be willing to face it. Like, these are not easy things. And a lot of times, I was telling somebody else today, when I do a regression, I will ask people, on a scale of like 0 to 100, 100 being the most, how much do you want to change? Like, how much do you
Mm.
want to fix this problem? And the conscious part of their mind often, and I did the same thing when I went through all of my inner child work, which is still ongoing, but it was 110%. I showed up, I paid this money, I'm here, I am doing the work. But when you get into the work, okay, you get asked the same question again. Now, from your child's perspective, how willing are you to face your demon, your
Mm.
shadow, the things that you don't want to anyone to know about, right? Or are these other things? And it is a far lower number.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's too low. Like, consciously, you want to solve something, you want to put the work in, you've convinced yourself of it, but you're not ready yet. That can happen. Um, you're on the path, but sometimes you're just not there yet.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we need people guiding us through that too. Because it can be painful and it can be really uncomfortable. And subconsciously, we will want to just like find reasons not to do it or choose to get up and go get a drink. Or, we're sitting down, we're meditating, and we're trying to get to the thing. We're trying to be with it and sit with it. And consciously, we're there. But then we have all these things. Our mind will come up with 1,000 different reasons why we can't do that right now. Or, well, I'll work on that again later. Or, well, okay, I spent 5 minutes. I got a thing. I got a little bit of insight. I'll come back later. And it's like we need someone to be held accountable to in a way to really face some things because it's hard to face those deep, dark things on our own sometimes. Wouldn't you say?
You can be, yeah, I mean, you can be guided, right? But ultimately, you're the one that it's like the Indiana Jones, like taking that step, right? Like, you're the one that has to put the foot forward
Right. Right. Yeah,
ultimately.
but we do need help sometimes too.
I'm yeah, and I'm not dismissing help, right? Like, it's helpful to talk to somebody like, hey, that these point you in the right direction, or kind of encourage you. Like, that's absolutely valuable.
Yeah. And it's not to take a power away from somebody. You know, we ultimately are the ones who have the power to make those changes, but sometimes
I
we need those guides along the way, really showing us what we're not seeing.
I will I don't know if this surprises people. I mean, when you conquer something and you face a fear and you have success, like it's this beautiful thing. Um, and for people that have helped me in my life, I'm very grateful. And, let them know it. Uh,
Mm.
but I don't want to, when people say that to me, if I've helped them in their healing journey, I'm like, you were the one that did it. Like,
Yeah.
I helped
Yeah.
you, but like you did it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm the same way. And usually what it comes to me as, it's like, okay, you came to me, I did help you. I pointed you in a direction, but then you were the one who went and did the work in that direction. And then you might have come back and I saw something else and then I pointed you in the direction. And I've gone to people, you know, when I can't see my own blind spots, I find it really helpful to go to somebody who can, because then I can just take off with it and do the work. And it's like I have something um, a little bit more concrete where I feel like I can work through, because otherwise, maybe my navigation system sometimes gets off. I think we all experience that sometimes. We don't know what direction to go in, we don't know what might be the best next step and in our journey. And I want to make it really clear, these things that we're experiencing, the outcomes are important, but what's really important is that process that we're working to get to that outcome. The outcome is just the carrot that's making us do the work.
Yeah. I mean, if any of my clients are listening to this, they're going to be, nauseated when I say it all the time.
Yeah.
This non-attachment to outcome,
Yeah.
focus on the process, right? Like you're, this is being shown to you for a reason.
When I think a lot of times we get disappointed or we feel like failures because we are focused on that outcome, and it's supposed to look a certain way and it's supposed to come with a certain amount of ease. And, you know, I think as souls, we come in for different reasons. Sometimes we come in to have a much easier life because maybe we just needed just a few simple lessons in this life, or you know, we needed certain things. Maybe it's more of a rest period because we had a really big whopper of a life the last time. But I think a lot of us, especially at this time, have come in to really work through these challenges, and it's meant to be difficult. And we tend to judge ourselves, or we might experience being judged by others because things aren't quite going the way we planned, or they're not looking the way we would want them to. And we're trying to manifest a certain experience and it's coming up differently. And but what I want to say to that, and what my guides will often say to myself and to others, it's, you're not failing. There is no such thing as failure. You're really not. You're just learning through that process, and it's all just a process. And to get detached from the idea of what your outcome is supposed to look like, but in every single moment, are you choosing the next right thing for you? And even if you don't, then okay, what's next after that? And then what's next after that? Because life is a series of choices that we are making, and some are more beneficial and some are not. But in every given moment, we're doing the best we can with where we're at to try to choose those things as wisely as possible. And sometimes we're just not doing the best job, and other times we're doing an amazing job, but it looks difficult from the outside looking in. It looks like maybe you're choosing the wrong thing because it's not what other people would choose. So it's, and then if you're not secure in your own being, which I think a lot of people aren't, you start to then question your process and you start to question where you're at and the choices you're making, even though it feels right. So, how would you talk about that? Like, if you had a client coming to you and they
Yeah.
were, you know, saying, I feel like I'm doing what all I'm supposed to be doing, but then life is showing up like this. What would you say? Because I'm hearing a lot of that from people right now.
I would try to get them to redirect it into their bodies and to get a sense
Mm,
of what they're feeling about it. I've had, I don't know, clients who are very successful in maybe the a material sense. I don't like where
mhm.
everything, all the boxes are checked, right? Like there's nothing perceivably wrong. But if you there, and then there's the projection of like, I don't know, perfection may not be the right word, but just like I have my stuff together, everything's great. And then when it'll start to come out, but eventually, you'll get their true feelings. And a lot of times too, they might not know either, right? Like how they really feel about a relationship with somebody, where it's like, well, it's not really as good as I thought. Or,
Right.
and it's like, okay, well, you have to be honest with yourself about things for you to even begin to focus on it, right? So, like, steering them towards feeling what they're feeling and then becoming aware of that. So, we have this chart, the wheel of life, and you give out your own assessment. And for a lot of people, I mean, that's not an exercise you do very often, right? So
Mhm.
you start to actually weigh things, bring awareness to, well, what kind of hobbies do I have? Well, maybe I don't have any hobbies. Maybe I just work all the time and make a lot of money,
Right, yeah, true.
or something else. It doesn't matter. Ultimately, it's, what are you, I think what was coming up for me as you were describing that is that at some point you have to trust yourself and take a risk.
Hmm,
That's sort of, the adventure in life, right? Is like you have to risk something. If you're going to create something, you have to risk that not everyone is going to like it. If you're going
oh,
to
yeah.
lead, not everyone is going to love each decision you make. It's
In
just
fact,
like,
a lot of people probably won't. Yeah,
maybe, but does that, so then you get into, okay, so do you appease them or do you do what you think is the right thing to do?
right.
And that, again takes courage.
Yeah, and I was talking to you about that before we started too. It's when you're stepping into leadership and you're really learning how to be a leader, one of the lessons I think I've learned over the years, or am learning probably still, is that I tend to look to those that I'm leading for guidance when I need to be looking for other people to lead me to where I need to go. And sometimes that stagnates me, and I think it throws me into like a loop. It throws me into this weird space where I'm not moving forward. I think that's important too. And we're all meant to be leaders in our own lives, and then some of us are called to lead communities or to lead others. And it's not an easy calling because you really got to face a
No.
lot of your stuff.
No, I mean, that's
Yeah.
so in a recent astrology reading, my north node is in Leo, which is the leader, right?
Right.
Courage, that kind of thing, like being seen. And that is something that terrifies me. I don't want to do it. I don't want the responsibility to, or the effort to do that. Of course, I'm working on it. But so coming from the south node to the north, that in your life, in your natal chart, that is your major sort of challenge in life and in what you're working on. And so that it asks of you to challenge yourself.
Hmm.
And that's where your growth comes, right? And those things that I've shied away from for years, but like it was funny because as I'm going through my life and like the different themes, it's like, why don't you be the captain of the team? And I'm like, I don't want to be the captain of the team. I'm quite happy to show up, play, and go home and not have to worry about things.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't want that.
Yeah.
But alas, here we are.
Well, stepping into something of a leadership position is incredibly challenging because you have to face your own stuff. You have to point out other people's stuff, and you've got to continually grow. And I think the ultimate responsibility of a leader is to keep growing and to keep learning and to keep becoming a better leader and at the same time being coachable to become a better leader, which is it's difficult because you think you know what you know and then you realize, oh, I've got more to learn. And then you think you know what you know and then you realize I've got more to learn. But at the same time, you've got to continue to lead those who you've been leading. And so it really kind of puts you in this amazing space of growth.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever grown as much as I have since I've started stepping more and more into leadership.
Well, I mean, you're in the pressure cooker, right? And so
Absolutely. Yeah.
if you don't adapt, and you have to be malleable in that way, right? Flexible to do that, you what? You get stuck. You can become arrogant, you can hurt people, hurt yourself by not. So you put yourself in a unique situation to really I would say be a catalyst for your growth for sure, right? And it's definitely not going to be
Yeah.
pleasant, but that's for at least leaders that I've seen that have done well is that they're flexible. I think there's a term that I just heard, rugged flexibility
Oh, I like that.
was a you hear a lot about grit. I don't know so much about that. You know how some things are like, well, it's all about grit.
Yeah.
Maybe, maybe not. But like rugged flexibility, I think I like a little bit more. It kind of defines, I think, what I'm talking about there. Um, but yeah, trust, embodying courage, how does that look like in your actions that you take? Knowing that some people are gonna bristle, as you move forward at things.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
Very
huffs, the
true.
puffs, the eye rolls, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's certainly not an easy path, but I think it's something that when people really start to develop more and more as souls and they're really stepping into who they are, that they do come more into a leadership position, even if it's more just in their own life. And just trusting themselves more and more and more and becoming coachable at the same time. And I think that that's something that needs to be navigated a bit, because when you are coachable, you tend to think, well, I've got so much to learn. And then when you're confident, the egoic side of that is the arrogance. And so, how do you have the confidence in where you're at, but yet still know you have so much more to learn? And I think sometimes, and then the wounding shows up in there, so it kind of can spin you out sometimes. And the reason I'm even bringing this up is because I'm seeing a lot of this in the community. I'm seeing a lot of it in my clients and my colleagues, people I'm talking to. There's just so much that we're just having to face about ourselves, so it can be uncomfortable.
It's that time.
Yeah, I know. And it's so important. And what I love about this energy is that just as quick as it's bringing it up, it seems like it's so much quicker to heal it at the same time. It doesn't seem like things that people used to try to heal for years. It's coming up and boom, 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 and it's all of a sudden healed. And then it's all of a sudden the next thing's coming up. It's so fast.
Time, it does seem to be at least it feels it to me like an expedited process.
Yeah.
These things are coming up, and it's a real opportunity. So, I mean, to look at it from a constructive approach, right? Like, okay, these things are showing up now. You can either tidy things up and face these things and kind of accelerate, or not. But you have a
Mhm.
choice. Um, none of this is necessarily pleasant per se. The world is it's chaotic, it's in turmoil. There's things happening. We're on the brink. Well, we are in war. We've been in war for decades. My goodness, but like, just it's we have to usher in. individually what we want to bring in, and then that you have that choice, you have that free will, but you have to clear up some of your own stuff, and that's what we're being asked to do now. Um, and it's not easy.
And we can't gloss over it either. And we really need to go deep with it.
Well, you can go as deep as you want to really go, right? But like how, and you decide that. Um, how much are you willing to sit and dive into your own shadow work, and resolve things that you need to resolve, tidy up things that you need to tidy up, and then bring in beautiful things, joyful things, happy things.
Yeah.
Um, Not that everything is always just gonna be, like that's the goal is just, oh, it's got to be positive and beautiful and all this other stuff. Um, but that there is a reason for it. And being intentional, I guess, being curious. If there is something that's on your plate right now that's troubling you, be curious about it. That's one of the things I wrote about in my blog about overcoming failure. Is a lot of times people aren't, they just blame somebody else. There's no next step, and I've seen it with people. It's just like probably one of the saddest things I see is when somebody gets, I don't know, pick a challenge. They get laid off or go through a divorce or something, and they just hate the other person. They blame the other person. It was their fault. It wasn't their fault. They're the victim, and then 30 years go by, and it's like, man, you have spent 30 years stewing in this. Like, what? You
Or
got to be
even if they're
kidding me.
not stewing in it, still experiencing the same pattern of things in other situations because it
Oh,
has
being
not been
married
resolved. Yeah.
2, 3, 4 times, 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I
So
think
it
it is. I think that's a really good point. As we're going through these upheavals, of the deep, dark shadow stuff that we really need to pay attention to within us, you to just remember that these things are happening because we have something to clear or to heal. Otherwise, it wouldn't be happening. So we have something within us that needs attention to get out of judgment of whatever that is. Because I think a lot of us have resistance because we judge it. We judge it as it's a bad thing or it's an awful thing, or I don't even want to look at that, or that can't possibly be within me. So we judge it and ignore it. So it's just going to keep getting worse and it amplifies and it's craziness so that you have to pay attention at some point. And everything that's happening outside of us, even with the false mirrors, everything that's happening, everything that's coming into our experience is happening for a reason. It may not always be the reason we think it is. It might be something different, like, for example, the false mirrors. But it doesn't mean that there isn't something for us to gain from that situation. So I think the idea of mastering our disappointments is really about turning everything on its head and not judging yourself or judging others or feeling shame or anything, and projecting that space of growth as opposed to fear. And how can we grow and learn from whatever is showing up and still be confident in who we are and loving and forgiving of the situation, whether it's something we did or something someone else did, and still being able to move forward and getting that golden nugget from it and building up our bank account basically of those golden nuggets, because right now has never been a greater time than now to get more of those golden nuggets and to build up that bank account because so much is coming up. And it is the time of the ascension, right? We're meant to purge this right now. So it's going to get a little messy and it's going to get a little uncomfortable, but I think we need to have an attitude of uh, it's almost like joy of finding these things within us that, oh, finally, now I know what it is. All right. Let's heal it as
Well,
opposed to running
you
from it.
yes, if you can be and so these are a couple themes to touch on. One is be kind to yourself.
Mhm.
I say this to people all the time, and I feel like it goes in one ear and out the other, but it's like, "Okay, yeah, you have this issue or whatever." Like, it's already happened. Are you how long are you gonna dwell on it? What's the word? Wallow.
Yeah,
How long are we gonna wallow? And the other is to be compassionate. So facing difficulty with kindness, right? So being curious about it and then compassionately working and use the word leaning into, which is like that language is appropriate. Lean into it. Okay, what do I need to work on to get better? I can't move up to the next level without conquering this challenge. You're defeating this opponent. So how can I do that in a kind way? If you come through it in that framework, I think you're far put yourself in a better position to conquer it, I think.
yeah. So true. Yeah.
Leadership, a lot of people got challenged during COVID, right?
Mm.
I don't know. I'm gonna share one story without giving too much away, but a lot of executives had to make really tough decisions of like how to like survive. Like, how am I gonna? I'm tasked with running this business, and I'm sure you have your own story, but just
Yeah.
how am I gonna navigate this? And then it became like, okay, the option is to piss off a lot of people or piss off a lot of people.
Right. Yeah,
It's like
exactly.
there
There
is
is
no
no
great
easy
option.
solution.
But
Yeah,
what's the one that makes the most sense? And then we just got to do it and
yeah,
see, we can't, everyone else's judgment is going to happen. And I'll tell you what, there are some brave people that made some really tough decisions, and steered their business through it and survived, and if you're listening and you're one of those people, good on you. I mean, like that was tough.
mm.
But
I
we're
think just
also
surviving it all, whatever
yeah,
decisions anybody made, surviving that whole experience, and, we're still kind of in the midst of it, we're still suffering as an economy from it all.
well, don't worry, there'll be another pandemic soon
Maybe
enough.
probably.
Not that I know that.
Well, it's all over the news, even though it hasn't
Oh,
happened yet.
all right, I'll stop
Yeah.
talking.
Well, it's the time of the ascension, it's time for people to awaken. Yeah. But leadership, it's never easy. But
No.
how can people really utilize these experiences that they're in to get into their own power and to really step into the leadership of their own lives and make changes? Because that's what we ultimately are being tasked to do. We need to make changes within ourselves.
So how I view it is what is getting in the way of me becoming the fullest expression of myself.
Mhm. Yeah.
And if you can start to bring awareness to that, then you can start to clean things up. Um, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it's beautiful. I mean, it doesn't get into the nitty-gritty of it all, but it's exactly.
Um, well, stick to the basics. One of the things that I find really challenging is eating healthy.
Mm,
One of the things that I found while trying to eat healthy is finding quality food that is like full of real, actual life force energy that
yeah,
isn't, I don't know, toxic, I guess, sprayed with chemicals. But
yeah,
I guess there's part of like it goes even deeper, right? Like how deep do you want to go? Like food sovereignty, knowing where your food came from, how it was nourished, that kind of thing. A lot of the food that we ingest nowadays, unfortunately, is not raised in a healthy manner. Like that's a challenge.
Or it's not even really food.
Or that, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you see all of these mental health challenges in a lot of ways they're finding because of the food, and the how it impacts your gut and your metabolic health, and how you go to a psychiatrist and it gets treated a certain way, but you're not even addressing the problem. You
You know, it's
know,
funny, this is totally off topic. Well, it's on the topic that we're on now and off topic of all
I
we've
was
been
just trying
talking
to get
about.
into the nitty gritty for you, but
Yeah,
yeah,
but I love it because, and I can't remember the guy's name, but when I was studying my traditional naturopathy degree, I was reading this one book, and he did a study. There were studies about people in prisons, and that they tended to be low in certain nutrients. And so they started giving them, it was like this whole thing where they started giving them all this very specific nutrition depending on what kind of symptoms they exhibited, like were they aggressive or, whatever it was. They would give them different nutrients. And in a large percentage of them, it resolved a lot of the issues. And so what they're finding is behaviorally, a lot of this is related to the types of nutrition that we're getting, and are we getting enough, or do we have imbalances in some way? So like things like copper and B vitamins, and it goes on and on. And there's a lot of things that they look for, but just found that fascinating. So as you're talking about it, and we're facing this whole thing with terrible nutrition, even an organic apple has nowhere near the nutrition that an apple had 100 years ago.
right.
And so we're facing all of this terrible farming practices, things in our foods that are not foods, a lot of toxicity. It's shutting down our bodies in certain ways and wreaking havoc, and also not giving us the nutrients we need to thrive. So, yeah, I totally agree. I think that's a big part of it.
Well, so I mean, just like that is, being mentally healthy and well, right?
Mhm.
Physically well to even take on these challenges that we're talking about. How are you going to dive in and do shadow work when you're like, in a sense, poisoning yourself and your body and your mind?
Or when you have a B vitamin deficiency and it's creating depression in your experience, because you've got, and so then how can you, yeah, it really is mind, body, spirit, this whole, we need to honor all of it.
So, so the nitty gritty, I mean, to answer your question, it's really keep it simple. I do kind of think that's a helpful principle to have, but just, how are you fueling yourself? How are you sleeping? How are you moving your body? Movement
Mm,
is medicine. Uh, which is a great podcast by the guys at Recharge and gals. But, you taking care of yourself, and through all of this stuff too, with the energy, you were mentioning the solar eclipse earlier, like the hangover of the energy of that. You also have recently had all these solar flares. You have these high energy things coming in too. There's a lot of things that are shifting. Mercury retrograde just ended, by the way.
yeah.
So communication, if you've noticed, communication was more problematic with other people, which it sounds like we have, then that's going on too. So there's just a lot of stuff happening. So making sure that you are grounding yourself as well, and that can be eating, a healthy meal to ground yourself, but finding some way to ground yourself. I don't know if you want to share what kind of practices that you find most helpful for that, Jen.
Well, I do a few. So one of the first things I do is I just, to me, grounding and embodiment are two different things. Grounding to me is connecting deeply to the earth or the earth energy. Embodiment is being fully in my body. So I like to delineate because people call grounding different things. So I embody, I really feel deeply, like I connect to my core, I connect to who I am, I feel myself in my body. I feel it, and I want to be really present with it. I'm not out floating someplace. So that to me, really firmly embodying coming in and being present and feeling the discomfort of being in the body. Sometimes, I think sometimes we hitchhike out of here and we go off to, I don't know, Planet Jen or Planet Jim or wherever we go, because it's uncomfortable in some way, either physically in the body, we're in pain, or it's just, what are we doing here? This place is crazy. So we just kind of go off somewhere and we're not present. But I also do like to ground to the earth because we are part of the earth. And so, some people like to walk barefoot outside. I don't usually like to do that unless I'm in sand. I don't enjoy the grass on my feet, so I don't do that. But I do have grounding shoes. Well, they're specifically designed to not block the energy from the earth.
Hmm.
So I've got those. I'll wear those outside. Also, too, I've got a grounding mat, so it helps me feel really connected and in my body, and it has that ion exchange that we're looking for. And sometimes I'll just connect spiritually to the earth and just really connect and feel that earth presence and that earth soul, and maybe even send energy healing to the earth, and usually we'll receive it back. So there's always a nice exchange there.
Is the ionic dynamic that you were just talking about, is that the same as like when you go to the ocean and the water, like the
Hmm.
negative ions?
Well, even just walking on the earth, walking barefoot. One of the things I also read when I was studying the traditional naturopathy was, and I can't remember what the name of the book was called because we read so many books, but it was, uh, they called them nature doctors. And it didn't matter how cold it was outside or what the terrain was, they never wore shoes because they swore that that feet connecting to the earth was vital for the body's ability to function correctly. And they would do things like, in this same book, they talked about there. And again, I don't remember where it was located. It was in Europe, somewhere in the mountains. But basically, it was this healing center way back when, decades ago, where people who couldn't seem to heal, they would go and they would go into this cold water as like a test. And if you developed, chicken skin, if you got all like your nervous system responded to the cold water, they knew they could heal you. If your body didn't respond, they would send you home. They knew they could not help you. And then the therapy was, you had to be barefoot and you would do these cold baths. I think it was a couple times a day. You only ate fruits and vegetables because you were detoxing. And you would walk up the mountain in the cold without shoes, without a coat, just minimal clothing, up and down. I think you did that at least once a day, might have been twice a day, I don't remember. And then you would rest. And they might have had some other hydrotherapy in there, I can't remember. But it was very simple. And they had a really good success rate of healing people.
Yeah, I can't remember where I was hearing someone talk about how, with the energy of the core of the earth, when you are able to connect in that way, that you are almost as if like the sun is, you get energy from the sun, from the earth, through the feet, through grounding, you're also able to cultivate energy in that way too.
Mm,
There is a Hathor. Are you familiar with the Hathors?
yeah.
Okay. um, I don't know, how would you describe the Hathors?
They look very different. Yeah, there's actually a lot of great pictures out there with them, and,
You see images of them in ancient Egypt.
yeah, yeah, they're
Uh,
human-like. Yeah,
Human-like, but not human, and perhaps
yeah,
not on the planet anymore. Tom Kenyon does
mhm,
some Hathor meditations, and one of the meditations that he has that I've been practicing recently is, Hathors are like very benevolent, kind beings. Is when you are breathing, just so thinking of your like a tube for your prana, for your life force energy that goes from the crown of your head, so the chakra on the crown chakra here, through the spine down to the perineum, so the place between your genitals and your anus, and you start to breathe and just imagine pulling up the energy from the earth. So this terrestrial energy coming up through the earth entering from the bottom, the root chakra, and then celestial energy coming from the top. And so just imagine almost like a tree of life, but that connection where
Mm.
and connecting in with your heart. So as you breathe, just imagining this energy coming through that tube and collecting this prana, this life force energy, and then, imagining this beautiful white light of energy collecting in your heart chakra as one practice. Um, So I just went a little galactic. I have a little galactic flavoring behind me here. It's a flower of life in a picture of the star system. I don't know what star system that is, or if it's just the Milky Way or something, with a what tetrahedron or some sacred
Yeah, the star
geometry.
tetrahedron. Yeah.
And then I pulled a galactic heritage card.
Awesome.
So I will share it here. I don't know if that's how
Ooh,
clear that comes through.
very clear.
Okay, so it is coming full circle, and it is from the Sirius collective, or the race of Syrians. um, and I will just read here. Um, in the ancient days, the Syrians placed codes within our DNA. So I just pulled this card within our DNA to help us evolve when the time was right.
Hmm.
That time is now. Humankind is awakening as the Syrians had hoped. Their task has come full circle. If you pulled this card, then you have a connection to that ancient Syrian past. Because of humankind's awakening, you have recently completed a karmic pattern held for thousands of years, which is a long time if you believe in it. Uh, you may feel subtle energies of completion, or you may feel nothing at all. But if you have any guilt about things left undone in the ancient past, it is not necessary to hold on to that pattern any longer. It is recommended that you check out some of these other cards with ET forefathers.
Hmm.
So there's a number of different races, right, in the galactic community, of which we are sort of being welcomed to, if you hadn't
Yeah.
noticed.
Yep.
When we complete goals or complete a cycle, we come full circle and are ready to start a new cycle of learning. If this card has come up in the reading, it is very possible that if you've just completed a cycle and are ready to start a new one. If you feel that this is not true and that you are currently stuck in a situation, then you can interpret this to mean that with all the work or avoidance you have done regarding an issue, you are coming full circle around to confront it again, giving you an opportunity to transform it once and for all. This is a powerful place to be. And when this card comes up, it usually means that you are poised for a powerful transformation in your life circumstances. Look to the other cards for further clarification if needed. Um, well, you know, this is a pivotal time, and kind of concludes in saying it's a great time to take that leap of faith into the unknown and begin a new cycle of learning and growth. And I think, one of the questions you asked me earlier, Jen, is that's the step, right? Like you have to take action on things. You can't just pray it away, or, I know we talked about spiritual bypassing in the past, but you really do have to take action.
Yeah.
Um, so there is that. Um,
What a perfect card to end this with.
well, here we are, right? Like and we're not done yet, because it's, in a way we're in the midst of it. So, this will look at these things as opportunities, and there's no there's only just learning now. So wherever you are and whatever is going on in your life, you know be optimistic would
Ah,
be my
beautiful.
final message.
I love it. Yeah. And don't be afraid. Don't be in fear.
No, don't be.
Face it.
It looked kind of grim, right? But
Yeah.
that's definitely one thing I do not have anymore is that fear. Despite all of these things that you may hear about, there's it's possible to be without fear in this time. So good stuff, Jen.
Yeah, great, Jim. Thank you so much.
All right, till next time.
Yeah, bye,
And
everybody.
don't forget to like, subscribe, share, tell someone about it, comment, please. Um,
Yeah.
and thank you, Joni, for your comments last week. It was much appreciated. All right, take care.
All right, bye.
Bye.
We are so grateful that you joined us. Check out the description to learn more about us and also for additional resources to help you on your journey.